Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, August 30th. I'm Weather and Radar Meteorologist Becca Parker. Today we're going over the intense Category 3 Hurricane Idalia, which just made landfall this morning. And I see a lot of you are already active in the comments. Awesome. Please let me know if you have any questions as we go about this update. We're going to be going over the main impacts that we're seeing right now and what's expected here over the next couple of days as Idalia continues its track over the southeast and back out into the Atlantic. Be sure to follow along in the Weather and Radar app as well. If you've not already downloaded it, it's completely for free. And you can see all the updates we're giving here right on the app, plus more, also on social media too. So again, any questions, please drop them in the chat. Happy to answer them throughout this live. And if you have a question, it's likely someone has the exact same question. So this is a lot of information we're going to be going over right now. So be sure to ask those questions just in case I don't cover everything that you want to know. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay. What you see behind me on the screen right now is the current situation of Idalia. So Idalia did make landfall at 7:45 this morning near Keaton Beach, Florida. And this hurricane was just before landfall, was a Category 4, major Category 4 at 130 mile per hour winds, but did drop to a Category 3. Not much of a difference though as far as impacts. Right before landfall and made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane with 125 mile per hour sustained winds. So this is the first Category 3 plus in Taylor County, Florida to make landfall on record, and that record goes back to 1851. So this is something that is making history as we watch Idalia move through northern Florida. And we continue to see impacts as it moves through. A lot of storm surge has already moved through. This area continues to come in up to 16 feet of storm surge. Power outages are climbing at this time, especially across the Big Bend area, which is no surprise. And heavy rainfall has been going on since early yesterday, starting in the Keys and then moving up Florida as Idalia made its way north on the eastern side of the Gulf of Mexico before it made landfall there this morning in the Florida Big Bend. So before I get into current details, I'm just going to double check for any questions. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. This is a serious situation. It's a historical situation. For those of you who are in Florida, for those of you who have interest in Florida, family, friends, we're thinking about you as we go through this, and try to stay as safe as possible and get all the information you need to know just so you can be fully prepared if it's not already reached your area. There's a lot of evacuations that have been mandatorily issued in the area as well, and we're going to go over that for Florida especially. So let's go ahead and look at the current details of Idalia as it continues to move through. So what you see on the screen right now, obviously, is Idalia and the next couple of hours as it moves to the northeast. You can see all the lightning that's coming from these outer bands, how the heavy rain that's moving through as well. And you can even see that eye. We'll zoom in here on what it looks like as it does move through Florida. You saw the eye just move across the coast there for official landfall at 7:45 this morning, moving into the Big Bend. Just near Keaton Beach is where landfall was this morning. It's a very early morning wake-up call landfall across the Big Bend of Florida here, an historical one as I mentioned earlier. So what you see on the weather radar is the heavy rainfall moving through as the colors get darker. That's the heavier rain, plus all the lightning that's even around the eye here and in the outer bands as well. You see all this lightning even extending all the way down to central Florida, even down into Cape Coral. Now this is also a situation where we're not far removed from Hurricane Ian, which hit less than a year ago last September, and a lot of the area that saw a lot of storm surge over the last day or so and continues to see that. Especially across the southwest Florida area. They did see some storm surge, obviously not as bad as what it was last year, thank goodness. But the area that did see similar storm surge and continues to see that this morning is the Big Bend area. We're up to 16 feet of storm surge. So storm surge, for those of you who don't know what storm surge is, it's literally the hurricane pushing water onto the coast. That surge is also on top of what high tide already is. So if you think of how the water level is much higher at high tide, add 16 feet on top of that, pushing into the shore and on land. So Storm surge also has been known to move, depending on the geography of the area, has been known to move up to 25 miles inland when it comes to hurricanes. So it's a very serious situation when you have storm surge warnings and storm surge watches in your area. And 16 feet of water, that's life-threatening. It's been catastrophic, unfortunately, across the Big Bend area. That's been the wordage used by the National Weather Service as Idalia has made landfall. So let's take a look too at the wind radar, what that looks like. Pretty impressive as far as the winds go from this hurricane. It went through rapid intensification. So yesterday, it became a hurricane yesterday overnight till yesterday morning, and then rapidly intensified in the last 24 hours, moving up to that Category 4 status eventually, but then just dropping right before landfall to Category 3. So you can see here on the wind radar, the winds wrapping around the center here. It's already moved over land as far as the center goes from landfall. And you see that counterclockwise turn in the winds as they move across. So these winds, they're 125 mile per hour sustained winds with higher gusts. So it's a very serious situation here. You can see even 65 mile an hour gusts over into southern Georgia, Tallahassee at 55 mile per hour gusts, Gainesville 50 mile per hour, and really intensifies as you get closer to that center around the eye wall area. So just a beast of a hurricane as it's moved here into northern Florida, into the Big Bend area. Let me double check for any questions before we move into full details. Alrighty. Yes, thank you all for tuning in. All right. Let's see. Wind and rain right now, good. Some trees down, yeah, not surprising at all. A lot of trees are going to be coming down with these gusty winds. Memphis is safe. Memphis, Tennessee, no issues. Yeah, high winds in Tampa, Bay Bridge is closed. Yeah, not surprised. This wind field, as you can see, extends way far out from the center across the wind radar here. So a lot of activity even across the entire Florida peninsula as Idalia even moves into the Big Bend area. So let's take a look at some details here. Let me pull up the National Hurricane Center. Let's see here. Alrighty. So this is what you're looking at for the National Hurricane Center. This is the cone of uncertainty. So what the cone does show, although we have, the central areas of the forecast where you see the possibility of the eye of the hurricane and then eventually tropical storm, what the cone shows is the eye could be anywhere along these edges. So the eye could be here, the eye could be over here as well. Can't see my cursor. It could be at the edge of the cone, it could be the other side of the cone as well. So depending on the forecast, that's where the eye could be. So it's not just the central portion of that cone where we're going to be seeing that forecasted placement. It's on either side of the cone or the middle. It could be anywhere within there. So as you see here, we're going to be seeing a turn from Idalia coming up here. So right now it's on the Florida Big Bend. It's going to be moving northeast across the southeast. Still going to be a hurricane over southern Georgia later this morning and this afternoon. We expect to be a Category 2 hurricane with 100 mile per hour sustained winds across southern Georgia. Then slightly weakening to a tropical storm into the coast of South Carolina, and then moving back out into the Atlantic, into the sea, south of North Carolina, and back out, obviously into the sea even further by later this week. So this storm has a lot to work with when we're talking about the energy. So the reason why I went through rapid intensification yesterday is because it had bath-like warm Gulf of Mexico waters in the mid to upper 80s to work with, which just feeds that storm, and little shear to even break it apart as well. So there wasn't gusty winds in the higher atmospheric levels to be breaking it apart. So this storm had a lot of good energy to work with as far as energy to intensify for it to make, get to that Category 4 strength. So it was not surprising to see that. And it will continue to move across the southeast and back out into the Atlantic later this week. Let me double check any questions before I move further. Yeah, 16 feet of storm surge is incredible. Savannah, Georgia, it is going to be moving over Savannah later this afternoon and overnight here, where there is a hurricane warning in Savannah, Georgia. So going to want to keep an eye on that. If there's not evacuations posted, if there's not voluntary evacuations posted, keep an eye on that area. The hurricane will be moving over that area as a lower end hurricane, but that does not matter because we're still going to be seeing heavy rain, very gusty winds, sustained winds of at least 100 miles per hour, possibly in that area. As it does weaken later today, maybe we'll get down to a category 1, but that does not matter. We got heavy winds, storm surge moving into that area as well. So Savannah, you're going to be seeing hurricane conditions later today. All right. So let's also take a look at what the surge actually looks like while we're on that subject. So with the National Hurricane Center, they did post what the surge is going to look like for this whole area. So like I said earlier, up to 16 feet of storm surge here all across the Big Bend. That's that wall of water moving in with the hurricane. So it just pushes all that water ashore. So we're seeing the impacts from that, going to see power outages. A lot of coastal properties are going to be either be damaged or unfortunately destroyed from this. We've already seen buildings being destroyed from the surge that's moved through. So we're seeing storm surge all the way from the southern Florida tip, the southwest Florida tip, all the way into the central portions of the Panhandle. And then eventually, as Idalia does move over the southeast and into the Atlantic, we're going to be seeing storm surge even along the southeast coastline here. So like I said earlier, Savannah, Georgia, you're going to be seeing 2 to 4 feet of storm surge as it does move across that area as well. So we're going to be seeing that all the way up to the North Carolina coast as Idalia does move out to sea, and later this week going to be becoming a tropical storm. So the storm surge, the issue with that is the extra flooding, that coastal flooding that does happen. And we've got high tide too. We're going through a full moon, and it peaked last night. That's why we were seeing even higher tides in this area. So higher tides plus a storm surge. We've got a lot of water that we're working with as the hurricane does move across here. So a lot of flooding issues. This is why we are seeing the mandatory evacuations being posted the last couple of days. That's why people needed to get out because of that storm surge and the power outage issues and the winds. So a very serious situation as Idalia moved through. Let me double check something here. Okay. And let's go over the rainfall that we talked about earlier. So the flooding rains that are moving through now, a lot of people have been seeing rain since yesterday across the Florida Keys, and it just moved northward throughout the night and then into this morning as well. So we're going to be seeing rainfall amounts up to 10 inches for a lot of these areas. That's the orange right here. So the Florida Panhandle here up to 10 inches, even across the southeast and even into the North Carolina coast here and even to the Outer Banks. Up to 10 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain, plus we have the storm surge. So this is a lot of water moving through the area. So the issues with the rainfall is going to cause flash flooding. There's likely flood watches and warnings posted in these areas. And areas that are drier than normal right now, even going through drought conditions, or if you already know that there's issues with drainage in the first place, just generally in your area, that heavy rainfall on top of that is going to cause puddling and eventually water runoff, and you're going to see water rising over flooded into roadways and walkways and all of that. If you come to a water-covered road or pathway, even if you know what the road usually looks like, they travel down it all the time. You don't know the road's there. I mean, unfortunately, the water can be so impactful that the road washes away out from underneath it. It can be so deep that you drive or walk through it and it's not there anymore. So be sure to turn around, don't drown before you walk into or drive into a flooded roadway. Just turn around. Best case scenario, just take the longer route back. That's going to be the safest scenario for you and for everybody around you. All right, let's take a look at the power outage situation here across Florida as well. So more than 138,000 customers without power. Let me just make sure. No, okay, it's increased to 232,000 customers without power, especially across the Big Bend here. That's where we're seeing those gusts and the sustained winds greater than 100, or we're seeing the gusts greater than 125 miles per hour, sustained at 125 miles per hour. So no wonder we're seeing these power outages and all that water sloshing in as well. So a lot of areas that are going to be seeing some trees down, a lot of trees down from this, and then the wind can also cause the building damage, roof damage, and send things flying, which can cause power outages, cause even more damage. So it's really impactful as Idalia does move through this area. So we did talk about how the track is moving. Let's show this again. Moving to the northeast and then eventually to the east and then the southeast. So you can see it just turning here as well, and then eventually out into the Atlantic. So what's coming from the western area? So many of you across the eastern U.S. might have looked at your forecast for later this into the weekend, into the next week. You're going to be seeing some increasing temperatures. Now, what that has to do with Idalia. The increasing temperatures are coming from a high pressure ridge that is going to be moving eastward, and that's eventually going to be moving into the eastern U.S., increasing temperatures, but also pushing Idalia out into the waters. We're going to continue to watch that forecast as the ridge does move to the east, and as we watch Idalia out in the Atlantic to see the impacts from that if anything changes. But that's what's going on right now. That's what we expect to happen over the next several days as the ridge does move to the east. All right. Before I close out here, I'm going to double check any more questions. Let's see here. Yeah, again, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you know somebody that's being impacted by this or is in the forecast to be impacted, as you can see, all the way up to North Carolina, we're going to be seeing impacts from Idalia. Send them this live, send them the app, send them the information. We're going to be having all the information going out all day today. We have a live blog going, so you can take a look at all the latest updates, latest forecast analyses, and all of that, and social media as well. I'm going to be keeping you updated throughout the day. Alrighty. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you all for your kind words and sharing your experiences as well, and those who are not even being impacted by it for tuning in as well and just sharing kind words. This is a lot happening right now, and we're going to keep you updated here at Weather and Radar throughout the day. And thank you all so much. Be sure to drop any questions in the comments after I post this video, and we'll be answering them throughout the day as well. Thank you all so much.